So, what was your job before you became homeless, before you lost your address?
I'm a senior JavaScript software engineer.
IT guy?
Yeah, yeah.
That was good money, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
How much money did you make?
6 figures, yeah.
6 figures.
Yeah.
And now you're on the streets from the
I'm on the
six
streets,
figures.
yeah.
That clip isn't extreme. It's not rare. It's becoming normal. People are working longer hours, taking on more responsibility, doing what they were told would lead to stability. And yet, the sense of safety never arrives. This isn't about motivation. It's not about work ethic. It's about something deeper. Why does working harder no longer translate into security? To understand that, we need to look at how effort itself has been repriced. For a long time, effort followed a simple logic. You worked harder, you moved forward. More hours meant more stability. More responsibility meant more security. That relationship didn't disappear overnight. It faded quietly. Today, most people aren't working less. They're working more. Longer hours. Fewer boundaries. More pressure to always be available. But something subtle changed. Effort stopped compounding. In the past, extra work often created leverage. Experience turned into seniority. Seniority turned into protection. Over time, effort bought margin. Now, effort is fragmented. Tasks are broken down. Responsibilities expand, but authority doesn't. You're expected to handle more, without gaining more control. This is why so many people feel busy, but stuck. Productive, but replaceable. Hard work still exists. What's missing is the payoff structure that used to surround it. Companies learned how to extract effort without committing to long-term security. Skills are unbundled. Roles are narrowed. Experience is treated as optional, not accumulated. From the outside, nothing looks broken. People still have jobs, still receive paychecks, still show up every day. But beneath that surface, effort no longer builds a buffer. It maintains motion. This is the shift most people feel but struggle to name. You're not lazy. You're not unmotivated. You're operating in a system where effort keeps you running, but rarely lets you get ahead. And when effort stops creating margin, working harder doesn't feel empowering anymore. It feels like treading water. For most of modern life, time was supposed to work in your favor. You stayed long enough, learned enough, waited patiently, and things gradually became easier. Experience mattered. Familiarity created efficiency. Stability reduced risk. Time didn't just pass. It accumulated. That assumption no longer holds. Today, time doesn't quietly build value. It leaks. Hours disappear into meetings that change nothing. Days are filled with maintenance work, not progress. Weeks pass without creating momentum, only exhaustion. You're busy, but the busyness doesn't compound. It resets. The modern work environment treats time as something to extract, not something to invest. Availability is rewarded more than mastery. Responsiveness matters more than depth. Being reachable becomes more valuable than being effective. This flips the old logic on its head. Instead of time creating leverage, time becomes something you spend just to stay in place. The longer you stay, the more specialized you become. But specialization no longer guarantees protection. It often narrows options instead of expanding them. Years pass, and what you've built isn't a cushion. It's a dependency. This is why so many people feel a quiet urgency beneath their routines. Not panic, not failure. A sense that time is slipping by without turning into security. The clock keeps moving, but the payoff keeps getting delayed. Promotions take longer. Raises feel smaller. Stability always seems one more year away. And because the reward is always just ahead, people keep giving more time, more evenings, more weekends, more mental space. The cost isn't always visible right away. It shows up later, when flexibility is gone and options feel narrower than they should. When time stops building margin, waiting stops being neutral. It becomes a risk. Most people aren't reckless. They don't chase extremes. They choose what feels safe. Steady jobs, predictable routines, clear rules. For a long time, that made sense. Safety meant protection. But in a faster, more fragile system, safety has quietly changed its meaning. Today, the safest-looking choices often come with hidden costs. They trade short-term comfort for long-term flexibility. Staying put feels responsible. Changing course feels risky. But when environments shift quickly, stability can turn into exposure, one employer, one income stream, one narrow role. On paper, that looks focused. In reality, it concentrates risk. The danger isn't sudden collapse. It's gradual dependency. Skills adapt to one system. Schedules adapt to one structure. Expectations shrink to fit what already exists. Over time, the ability to move weakens. Not because people become incapable, but because options quietly disappear. This is why so many people feel trapped without knowing why. Nothing is wrong. The paycheck still arrives. The routine still works, until it doesn't. And when something finally breaks, the cost of adjusting is much higher than expected. Safe choices don't fail loudly. They fail by limiting alternatives. By the time change feels unavoidable, the room to maneuver is already small. This doesn't mean people chose badly. They chose based on old rules. But when the system stops rewarding stability, stability stops being protection. It becomes a constraint. When people hear that old forms of stability no longer work, the instinct is panic. If saving doesn't protect you, if hard work doesn't pay the way it used to, then what does? The answer isn't chaos, and it isn't constant risk-taking. What changed isn't the need for stability. It's the shape of it. In a less predictable environment, stability no longer comes from standing still. It comes from staying adjustable. The most resilient people aren't the ones with perfect plans. They're the ones with room to respond. Income that can shift matters more than income that simply exists. Skills that travel matter more than roles that lock you in place. The goal isn't to abandon consistency. It's to avoid dependence on a single fragile structure. This kind of stability doesn't look dramatic. It's quiet. It shows up as optionality. The ability to say no. The ability to move. The ability to adjust without starting from zero. This is why flexibility now outperforms loyalty. Not because loyalty is wrong, but because systems change faster than commitments. The people who feel least panicked aren't reckless. They've simply stopped tying their future to one narrow outcome. They don't assume time will fix everything. They don't assume effort alone will be rewarded. They build room. Room to change direction. Room to learn something adjacent. Room to absorb disruption without collapse. This isn't about winning. It's about not being trapped. In a world that shifts quietly and often, the most durable form of stability is the ability to adapt before you're forced to. The hardest part about this shift isn't financial. It's psychological. People didn't fail because they made bad choices. They followed rules that worked for a long time. The problem is that those rules didn't break loudly. They expired quietly. When that happens, confusion sets in. You start questioning yourself. Why does this feel harder than it should? Why does progress feel slower, even when I'm doing everything right? But clarity changes that feeling. Once you see that effort, time, and stability are being priced differently, the frustration starts to make sense. Not because things are hopeless, but because the environment is less forgiving. Small mistakes cost more. Delays matter more. Standing still carries weight. This isn't a call to panic, and it isn't a demand to reinvent your life overnight. It's an invitation to stop measuring yourself by standards that no longer match reality. Awareness doesn't solve everything, but it changes how you move. You stop waiting for effort to magically turn into security. You stop assuming time will fix what the system no longer supports. Instead, you pay attention to flexibility, to margin, to how easily your life can absorb change. The people who adapt early aren't the ones who saw the future. They're the ones who noticed the present more clearly than others. They didn't quit. They didn't give up on responsibility. They adjusted before standing still became too expensive. This isn't about fear. It's about alignment. When the rules change, pretending they haven't is often more dangerous than responding to them calmly. If this felt familiar, it's probably because you're not failing. You're just living in a world that quietly moved the goalposts. And noticing that shift is the first real form of stability left.